What is the nature of reality? Are we living in a material universe out of which consciousness has emerged and evolved? Or are we living in a universe that is consciousness? Is consciousness the source? Is consciousness the root, the cause of everything that we observe? And does the material universe itself emerge out of consciousness? These are the fundamental questions, the very root source questions that determine everything that we experience in our normal, everyday living lives as human beings. And it is mystics who have historically, from the most ancient of times, taken these questions very seriously, really investigated what is the source of this reality field that we are experiencing. Are we truly, simply evolving out of matter, or is matter evolving out of consciousness? These are really two very different paradigms of reality. But if we really go and we take a look at what the ancients told us, at the wisdom that the ancients, the ancient mystics, the ancient storytellers encoded in the sacred scriptures, in the stories that have been passed down from generation to generation, you will see that these ancients really truly believe that we are living in a universe of consciousness, and that everything that we experience, everything that we witness, everything that is around us, the entire material universe has emerged from consciousness. Now, the title of today's lesson, drawing back to Neville Goddard's original Masterclass taught in 1948, is Assumptions Harden into Fact. And the idea that we are living in a consciousness-first model of reality is an assumption. And all of the facts of our lives are predicated upon this assumption. Do our thoughts and our feelings have any type of relationship to the events and circumstances of our lives? If consciousness is the only reality and our assumptions harden into fact, then of course the answer must be yes. And of course, in the other paradigm, if truly we are living in a material universe out of which consciousness has evolved, then in theory, our thoughts and our feelings would be entirely separate from the reality in which we are experiencing, would have no impact on it. We would simply be separate or held apart, right? Having individual experiences that do not affect the collective in any way, shape, or form. Now, really the only way, and Neville has said this, I have said this, every mystic has said this for countless generations, the only way to know for sure is to test it, to see for yourself, to put the wisdom to the test, to find out from first person, firsthand lived experience, does my consciousness create my reality? Do my thoughts and feelings and emotions and assumptions affect or influence in any way the circumstances that are observed in my life? Welcome, everyone, to Sunday Mystery School. It is an honor and a great pleasure to be here with you all today. We're going to continue today with Neville Goddard's Masterclass, the classic Neville, as I've seen it referred to on the internet. Classic Neville, where he takes these sacred ancient teachings of the ancient storytellers, which were condensed, collected over the centuries into what we currently know as the Bible. He takes these fundamental stories and he decodes them in a way that helps us understand what the sacred mystical truth is that was considered so precious, so fundamental, so necessary to the freedom of the hearts and minds of humans, that our ancient ancestors, with great care, with great dedication, focus, and intention, encoded this wisdom into stories. They say that wisdom capsulated in a tale, story, right, enters at lowly doors, okay? It's not the exact quote, but it's pretty close. The idea that if you take this, a very sacred, intentional wisdom, and you clothe it in a story, okay? It is much easier to accept, ingest, and digest than if you kind of give these, mind-blowing, expansive quotes about consciousness being the nature of reality. It's easier to dramatize it into a story, and it's easier to pass down from one generation to the next with these sacred wisdom teachings, just woven right into the characters, the places, the ideas of these sacred stories. And that's exactly what the origin of the scriptures is. That's what the ancient storytellers were doing. Of course, we're very grateful to them for doing that. And we're also grateful to the mystics who have taken the time to now decode the wisdom that was encoded originally by these ancient storytellers. If you've been attending Sunday Mystery School for a while, this is episode 10. If you've been attending Sunday Mystery School for a while and you have not been a hearer only, but also a doer of the wisdom that is being presented in this space, then chances are you have evidence from firsthand personal lived experience that your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your state of being, your consciousness itself is influencing, directing the circumstances of your life, and that the person that you believe that you are, right, is being reflected back to you in the world around you. We talk about this world being a consciousness first model of reality, and how really the world that we live in is our innermost thoughts, feelings, and beliefs put on display, clothed in matter, that we may interact with them, that we may know ourselves through having ourselves, which is, of course, defined by a self-concept, right? Who do we believe that we are? That self-concept, the world reflects back to us in circumstances, situations, places, people, things, objects, nouns, right? All of those things are our beliefs about ourselves being clothed in a story to be told back to us, right? We're living in this mirror-like world where there really is, no one to change but self. We really are the cause. We really are the source. Everything in our life is reflecting back to us that which we believe that we are. And if we change the belief of who we are, or the state, or our self-concept, right? If we change our habitual thoughts, feelings, emotions, we change our consciousness, the world around about us that we experience, the story on the outside changes because it is a mirror reflecting back to us what we believe that we are. We're going to continue with Neville's Masterclass, continue with this lesson, and we're going to get into more of these stories from these ancient storytellers, told and preserved as wisdom in the Bible. And the lesson that we have today is going to build upon last week's lesson, where we really experience this kind of retelling under slightly different circumstances, the same theme, right? It's like the same theme that has been animated in these other dramas, these other stories that we've explored across these episodes of Sunday Mystery School, the same theme being told again, but this time in the form of Jesus being called before Pilate, right? And Pilate, saying, hey, it's the custom at the Passover, right? The moving of one's state of consciousness to another for one to be released. Do you want to release Jesus, or do you want to release the robber? Right? Do you remember this from last week? So do you want to release the robber? And the crowd's like, oh, let's release the robber. Let's release the thief who is stealing from us that which we desire to be, through the belief that we are not, right? The belief that we are not robs from us the possibility of being. Okay, so the crowd clamors, according to these ancient storytellers, this narrative, this drama, the crowd clamors for the release of the robber. Let's set Barabbas free. Let him go, right? And instead, let's crucify Jesus. So that brings us up to where we are in this lesson, brings us up to where we are in this story. And in today's episode, we're going to explore further more of this story. And we're also going to work our way through this biblical, narrative to where Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, before we go any further, I would like to take this opportunity, since we are gathered here together in this moment, it seems the perfect opportunity, to speak a blessing over everyone who is present here today, all of the hearts and minds that have taken the time to join this group taking this time to be present with this collective consciousness that we represent in this moment, to speak a blessing over all of us, and also from a place of gratitude and appreciation, to speak this blessing over all sentient beings. So I invite you to join me now, drawing our senses inward. We're going to go into the silence, and I'm going to speak these words of power over our group. I turn now to go within, drawing my senses inward into the center of my own being. I offer gratitude and appreciation in this moment for the perfection that is this present moment. In gratitude, we accept that we are, and we declare that we are wise souls, growing healthy, youthful minds. Thank you that we are feeling now the presence of life force energy, awakening, enlivening, and making whole our bodies in the physical dimension. Thank you that our relationships are now healed with love, compassion, and understanding. Thank you that we have humbly accepted our power and our responsibility to imagine wisely as sovereign co-creators of this world we share. Thank you that we are inspired by life-expanding, consciousness-uplifting possibilities manifesting now. We honor the ancestors who have walked this path ahead of us, each and every ancestor. Thank you for the wisdom passed down from the ancients, encoded all around us in the spirit of liberating our hearts and our minds. And thank you that together we welcome the inheritance, our inheritance, of our bright and beautiful future. And so it is. Wonderful. Okay. There is a text for today's lesson. The link to it is found in the description of the video on YouTube. It is not necessary that you hop in on the text, but if it helps you focus, you are welcome to do so. And for those of you, my channel mastermind members in the Zoom room, I have just dropped the link in the Zoom chat. We are continuing with page 4. Okay. So page 4 of this text. So just, I kind of brought you up to speed in my introduction here. We're talking about the Passover. We're talking about releasing that which robs us of being the people we desire to be, that which robs us, which is this belief that we are not. The belief that we are not is the robber that robs us of our possibility of being. Okay. And this is always true. And this is also not a good or a bad thing. It's simply an observation. If we are truly unlimited beings, as our consciousness first model of reality would suggest and imply, okay, then truly we have the possibility of being anything, of having any self-concept. And so anything that we believe that we are not, we are being robbed of by Barabbas. Okay, Barabbas the robber, which is the name implies the nature. Okay, so there's a, Barabbas is linked to our consciousness, to our awareness. Okay. So this is true, both of the things that we desire to be. If we believe that we are not who we desire to be, we're being robbed by Barabbas. Okay. But then also there's these other things that we don't want to be, right? So we believe that we're not those things. And Barabbas is also robbing us of that possibility, right? So this is not about saying that Barabbas by definition is something unwanted or negative. Barabbas is simply part of the mechanism of consciousness, mechanism of being human, right? Barabbas is that aspect of the name of the Son, right? So we have the name of the Father, the Yod He Vav He, the name of the Son, the Yod He Vav Shin Ayin, Jesus, right? Which has the ability to choose. The Son has the ability to choose what the Son is aware of being, meaning that the Son can also choose to be something new, to let go of an old state and to move into a new state, and then to let go of that state and choose again. This is the magic of being sons of the Most High. This is our consciousness, our power. This is our ability to tell our story. This is exactly what we came to earth as sons of the Most High to experience. Okay? So we're continuing on page 4 with Neville's words. Neville says, "You walk in the consciousness of being that which you want to be." Okay? So you walk, meaning you operate your daily life, move one aspect, moment by moment, right? They call it segment intending, right? So it's like moving from one segment of your experience to the next, and you're walking conscious of being who you desire to be. No one else sees it yet, Neville says, but you do not need anyone else to roll away the problems and the obstacles of life in order to express that which you are conscious of being. If this is truly a consciousness first universe that we're living in, if the universe is literally evolving and expressing out of consciousness, then we don't need anything else to aid us. Simple awareness is enough, because awareness is inextricably linked to consciousness itself, right? So consciousness is that awareness. So really, the entire universe is emerging from the state of awareness. So naturally, any imagined obstacles or problems would be overcome by a simple awareness of already being. Neville's way of saying that, he says, that state, that which you are conscious of being, has its own unique way of becoming embodied in this world, of becoming flesh, that the world may touch it. Now, you can see the relationship between the story of Jesus and the story of Isaac and his 2 sons, where one transplanted or supplanted the other. One was actually called, the name was actually called the supplanter of the other. Why do you think those who compiled the 60-odd books of our Bible made Jacob the forefather of Jesus? They took Jacob, who was called the supplanter, and made him the father of 12. Then they took Judah, whose name means praise, the 5th son, and made him the forefather of Joseph, who was supposed to have fathered in some strange way this one called Jesus. Jesus must supplant Barabbas, just as Jacob must supplant and take the place of Esau. We often talk about Sunday Mystery School as being a language training. A language training, meaning that language is how we relate to ideas with other people. Okay, so in order for you and I to share a conversation about an idea, we must have a shared language, some sort of shared context and understanding that helps us really make these ideas or these concepts tangible through our language, so that we can have a meaningful dissertation or conversation or discussion about them. Okay? These stories are condensing what are somewhat complex, I would say maybe intricate, perhaps. Not complex in terms of difficult to understand, but intricate or extensive concepts within consciousness, and condensing it to the name of a character. Okay? So if you're attending this language training and I say, oh, you have to send Esau hunting, okay? That's a mystery to anyone who doesn't understand. That's why it's called mystery school, right? It's a mystery to anyone who doesn't come to language training. They don't have no idea what that means. Okay. But if you're taking the language training, you understand that sending Esau hunting is a one sentence way of conveying this idea of letting go of what seems to be real now through the process of state akin to sleep, meditation, drawing our senses inward, going within, dimming the senses, going into the closet. There's all these different ways to say it, right? But you can take this idea of like letting go of what appears to be now so that we may focus our consciousness and become aware of being what we desire to be. Okay. That you can do a whole chapter of a book about this idea, and then you can condense it into send Esau hunting, 3 words. Okay. So that is a further illumination of why this is language training. And this is exactly what the ancients were doing, right? They were taking what could be an entire chapter of a book and they were condensing it to a story that when you install the eyes to see the meaning, it's like compression, right? Like file compression. You can take 20 files and compress it down to the size of 3. It's the same thing, right? Take this amazing, gigantic, fundamental idea in consciousness and condense it down to this very simple precept embodied in a tale, okay? Jesus must supplant Barabbas. So Jesus, the state that we desire to be, must supplant and replace the robber, which was the belief that we are not. Just as Jacob, the second smooth-skinned son, the imaginal act, must take the place of Esau, which is the hairy, sensorially felt and experienced 3D reality around us. Neville continues. He says, tonight you can sit right here and conduct the trial of your 2 sons, one of whom you want released. You can become the crowd who clamors for the release of the thief. And you can also become the judge who willingly releases the thief, lets the thief go, and sentences Jesus to fill his place. Jesus was crucified on Golgotha, the place of the skull. That word Golgotha means skull. And Neville says the skull is the seat of the imagination. To experience the Passover, which is the passage from the old state to the new concept of self, you must release Barabbas, which is your present concept of self, which is also your belief that you are not what you desire to be. Barabbas is what robs you of being that which you could be. Barabbas is the thief of possibility. Neville says you must assume the new concept which you desire to express. The best way to do this is to concentrate your attention upon the idea of identifying yourself with your ideal. Identifying yourself. So we're speaking to our core identity. Who do we believe that we are? Assume you are already that which you seek. And your assumption, though false, if sustained, will harden into fact. At the time the assumption is made, this is a crucial point. At the time the assumption is made, it is evidentially false. Because at the time the assumption is made, you are entering the Passover, and you enter the Passover in the old state of being, which is currently reflected round about you. Okay, so you're currently, the mirror is showing you your old state of being, right? So to assume a new state of being at the time you move into the Passover, to pass over from the old to the new, at the time you're entering the Passover, the assumption is false as reflected to you by the evidence of your world, okay? So that's always going to be true. If you're literally moving from an old state to a new, There will always be an aspect of it that the world would say is false right now. Then you move into the Passover, you move into the new state of being, and if you sustain that new state of being, the mirror will reorganize itself to reflect back to you, evidentially, your new state of being. And that's the time at which the world will say, yes, that is true. You have evidence for it. Okay. But the key idea here is at the time the assumption is made, it is false. Okay. It is false as measured by the world around you. Okay. So that's a crucial element of this. And you have to be able, as the author of your life, as the author of your reality, you have to be able to sustain your ideal even when the mirror is not yet showing you the evidence that it is true. You will know that you have succeeded in releasing Barabbas, which is your old concept of self, when you have successfully crucified Jesus or fixed the new concept of self by simply looking mentally at the people you know. This is the key. This is the key to how this reality field operates. You know that you have released the thief of your possibility and successfully become your new ideal by looking mentally in your imagination at the people that you know. If you see those people the same way that you saw them before you entered the Passover, you have not changed your concept of self. For all changes of concepts of self result in a changed relationship to your world. I'm going to say that one more time because this is a crucial point of this lesson. You know whether you are successful or not by looking mentally at the people that you know, the people in your life. If you see those people the same way that you saw them when you were in the old state, you haven't moved at all. All changes of self-concept result in a changed relationship to your world. We always seem to others an embodiment of the ideal we inspire. We always seem to others an embodiment of the ideal we inspire. I was sitting with this sentence and I was considering it earlier in preparation for this lesson. And I was thinking about, who do I know in my life that inspires an ideal? And do they seem to be an embodiment of that ideal? And as soon as I asked that question, several examples flooded into my awareness. This is a true sentence. We seem to others to be an embodiment of the ideal we inspire, just as others seem to us to be an embodiment of the ideal they inspire, right? This is like an archetypal way of relating to others. Okay, it's just like kind of something that our awarenesses do. You know, we come into awareness of another person and they seem to be this really intense embodiment of whatever ideal they inspire, right? So they like seem to be intensely that way. And the same is true for us. We seem to be intensely, you know, an embodiment, intensely an expression of the ideal that we inspire, or just kind of that we radiate. You know, we kind of have these auras of like the kind of person that we are. And when other people see that, they're like, oh yeah, that person is like an embodiment of like that aura of how they are. Okay. So Neville is saying in meditation, we must imagine that others see us the way they would see us were we what we desire to be. Okay, so we take this principle of just kind of radiating this aura and other people seeing us as being an embodiment that way, and then we change the aura that we're radiating, and then we see them seeing us in that new light. And this is how we know that we have moved our self-concept from the state of wanting to the state of being. Neville says, you can release Barabbas and crucify and resurrect Jesus if you will first define your ideal. Then, state akin to sleep. Relax in a comfortable armchair. induce a state of consciousness close to sleep, and experience in your imagination what you would experience in reality, were you already that which you desire to be. This is how we move. This is the mechanism. It's built right into our awareness. It's built right into consciousness itself. This is a consciousness universe we are living in, right? So our awareness is creating the universe. So by simply changing our awareness, we are changing our lives. Neville says, by this simple method of experiencing in imagination what you would experience in the flesh, were you the embodiment of the ideal you serve, you release Barabbas, who robbed you of your greatness, and you crucify and resurrect your Savior, which is the ideal you desired to express. Now, let us turn to the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay, so he's changing the subject here, but really just moving ahead in the story. But these ideas are all just intricately linked here. So we're really continuing the same theme, even though the story is changing. And I invite you to notice how that is true in the expansion of this story that we're getting into, this story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Neville says, bear in mind that a garden is a properly prepared plot of land. Okay? Jesus was not in the wilderness of Gethsemane in this story. Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was in a properly and intentionally cultivated plot of ground. It is not a wasteland. You and I, we are preparing this ground called Gethsemane by coming here to Sunday Mystery School and studying and doing something about our minds. Neville says, spend time daily preparing your mind, cultivating your garden by reading good literature, listening to good music, and entering into conversations that ennoble. Entering into conversations that ennoble. Noble conversations. We are told in the epistles, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Think on these things. Prepare your garden with these things. Philippians 4:8. Continuing with our story, Neville says, as told in the 18th chapter of John, Jesus is in this garden. And suddenly a crowd begins to seek him. He is standing there in the dark, and he says, "Whom seek ye?" The spokesman for the crowd, called Judas, answers and says, "We seek Jesus of Nazareth." A voice answers, "I am he." At this instant, the entire crowd falls to the ground. Thousands of them tumble over. That in itself, that disclosure in this story should stop you right there and let you know that this could not be a physical drama, because no one could be so bold in his claim that he is the one sought that he could cause thousands of people who seek him to fall to the ground. But the story tells us they all fall to the ground. Then, when they regain their composure, they asked the same question again. Moving on to page 6. Jesus answered, I have told you that I am he. If therefore you seek me, let these go their way. Then Jesus said unto him, Judas, that thou doest, do quickly. Judas, who has to do it quickly, goes out and commits suicide. That's the story. Now to the drama. You are in your Garden of Gethsemane, which is, said another way, your prepared mind. If you can, while you are in a state akin to sleep, control your attention and not let it wander away from its purpose. If you can do that, you are definitely in the garden. Very few people, Neville says, can sit quietly and not enter a reverie or a state of uncontrolled thinking. When you can restrict the mental action and remain faithful to your watch, not permitting your attention to wander all over the place, but hold it without effort within a limited field of presentation to the state you are contemplating, then you are definitely this disciplined presence in the Garden of Gethsemane. The suicide of Judas is nothing more than the changing of your concept of self. When you know what you want to be, you have found Jesus, your Savior. When you assume that you are what you want to be, you have died to your former concept of self. This is embodied in the aspect of this story, Judas committing suicide. You have died to that former concept, and you are now living as Jesus. You can become at will detached from the world round about you. Detached from the world around you and attached to that which you want to embody within your world. Now that you have found me, now that you have found that which would save you from what you are, let go of that which you are or have been and all that it represents in the world. Become completely detached from it. In other words, allow that old state of being, that old self, and the world, the whole set of mirror reflections that reflect back to that concept of self, allow that to go out and commit suicide. Jesus is in the garden and he says, now that you have found me, let these go their way. Okay, so you're on this prepared plot of land, which is a properly cultivated mind, and you are seeking with a controlled attention that state of being that you desire to move into, right? And once you find it, you let go all of the distractions, right? And then you let that old state of being, which was your former concept of self, go out and commit suicide. You completely die to what you formerly expressed in this world. And you now completely live to that which no one saw as true of you before. Remember, at the time the assumption is made, in terms of evidence of the 3D world, it's false. No one would see you that way unless they really love you and are looking at you with the eyes of possibility, right? But the world in general would not see you in that state. Okay? And it's not necessarily their job to. Your job is to see yourself in the state you desire to be. Neville says, you are as though you had died by your own hand, as though you had committed suicide. You took your own life by becoming detached in consciousness from what you formerly kept alive, that old self-concept. and instead supplanting that old self-concept by releasing that thief of possibility, you begin to live to that which you have discovered in your garden, in that properly cultivated place in your mind that you can go to find that ideal you would serve. Neville says, when you do this, you have found your savior. This is not a story about men falling. This is not a story about one man betraying another. Rather, this is an illustration, an illumination of this concept of detaching your attention from an old way of being and refocusing your attention in an entirely new direction. In these Sunday Mystery School sessions, as we've been exploring this idea of going into the silence and traveling, right? We've said over and over again, you know that you are successful when you come back from one of these meditative sessions, right? When you come back from your garden and you know, with really that silent, confident, calm knowing that is found in the very center of your own being, you know that you are now a different person than the one who left in that and began to journey in that meditative state. You come back a different person, okay? This is an entirely new direction. This is why the storytellers, they embodied it with such drama, these ideas of suicide or of life and death, right? Like I'm thinking of the story of Moses, like, dying and defying posterity to try to find where the old body was buried. Like these are really dramatic ways of telling this story, but it's appropriate to use this language, right? Even if it seems a little, perhaps in our modern sensibility, extreme to talk about, the old state committing suicide. Like, okay, wow, that's kind of intense language to use. But the ancients wrote it this way on purpose because they are conveying how complete and total a transformation it is when this is successfully completed. This is not a let me go into the silence and play around a little bit and see what happens. This is a let me go into the silence and completely let go of my old identity, who I thought I have been being, the state that I have been thinking myself as being. Let me completely let go of that, right? They say you cannot put wine in an old wineskin, right? You cannot repair your clothes with just patches, right? You have to completely choose a new wineskin and fill it with wine. You have to completely choose a new costume. These are all ways telling in a story of conveying the same idea that there's a complete transformation that occurs. There's very little of according to the way these ancient storytellers were framing this, there's nothing left of that old state. It is gone. It is gone and dead and buried, and you can't even find it anymore. There's nothing left, okay? This is an entirely new way of being that you bring back from the silence. You are now this new person. And Neville says there's a lot of people that potentially find it difficult to control their attention in a way in this garden, this prepared plot of land, to be able to plant an awareness of a new state of being, right? So that's why at Sunday Mystery School, we emphasize the importance of practice. Every single week, there's this homework assignment of going into the silence and practicing. And of course, we have tools today that Neville wasn't even aware of. We have things like brainwave entrainment tracks, which can help us get into the appropriate state of mind and hold it, okay? Like the ancients would consider us just a little bit spoiled, right? Because we have all of these aids, all of these assistants, not that we need them, but they're there and they can be helpful. Okay, we have Shakti mats, right, which can help us completely leave the body behind and be able to travel in our awareness because of the intense relaxation that it creates, right? We have, most important point here is that we can practice this, and practice is essential. Okay, this is not something we do once. If you're doing this properly, you're probably going to do this basically every day, right? Not because you're not it and you need to become it, and then you're not it and you need to become it, but rather because you understand that this is the way that you are writing your life into being, is by going into these states of awareness, right? Going into these states of awareness, and this is the author state. This is access to the source code of reality. And so you do it with this reverence, with this respect, right? With a humility, but also with a power and a purpose and an intentionality. Okay, this properly prepared garden of the mind, right? You're not going into the wilderness, you're going into the garden. And there's all the difference in the world. And ancient storytellers very brilliantly encoded these ideas, even in just the setting. You know, they're not talking about Jesus walking into the jungle. They're talking about him walking into the properly prepared plot of land, the garden. Okay, so it's like these key tenets of how to do this are being presented here. Okay, and they're using this pretty intense language because it's kind of a big deal, right? Like this, as we've said before in these sessions, this is not just a life skill. This is actually an eternal life skill, because this is the sort of thing that your soul uses in eternity to navigate states, because we're talking about consciousness itself as being the source of our entire reality, right? Not just consciousness in a human being, consciousness itself being supreme. Okay, so being able to shift your awareness is an eternal life skill. Ancients knew this, and they made sure that we knew it by passing it down in these stories and then sending us mystics such as Neville and others to help us remember. Continuing with Neville's words, he says, "This is not a story about men falling or men betraying each other, such as Judas, the way that people have misunderstood this story and made it mean something entirely different. This is a story about detaching your attention completely and refocusing your attention in an entirely new direction. From this moment, you walk on as though you were what you used to want to be." Okay, because you're leaving the state of wanting. Wanting robs you of your possibility, robs you of your power of being. Okay, so you now walk on being what you used to want to be. Remaining faithful, Neville says, to your concept of yourself, you die or commit suicide. The old concept of yourself dies or commits suicide. No one took your life. You laid it down yourself. You must be able to see the relation of this story to the death of Moses, where he so completely died that no one could find where he was buried. You must also see the relationship of the death of Judas. He is not a man who betrayed another man called Jesus. The word Judas means praise. It is Judah, to praise, to give thanks, to explode with joy. That really gives this story a whole different tone, does it not? You do not explode with joy unless you are identified with the ideal you seek, with the ideal you want to embody in this world. When you become identified with the state you contemplate, you cannot suppress your joy. You cannot suppress your joy. You become Judas, exploding with joy. The joy rises like the fragrant odor described as Jericho in the Old Testament. I am trying to show you that the ancients told the same story over and over again in all the stories of the Bible. All that they are trying to tell us is how to become that which we want to be. They imply in every story we do not need the assistance of another. You do not need anyone else to become now what you really want to be. When I think of this, when I think of these ancients telling the same story over and over again, each story being an embodiment of a wisdom of how to be what we desire to be. I think of that loving father, mother looking at their child, and in that act of love, hoping, wishing, believing that their child can live their best life. Right? So it's like you're the parent, you look at your son or daughter, and really what you want more than anything else is for them to live and express their potential, to be their best selves and to live their best life. And so what do you teach them? You teach them how to become what they want to be. It's the most important thing you could possibly teach them. And so now we zoom out on the timeline and we see that there are all of these ancient storytellers who saw us, in a manner of speaking, as their posterity, as their children. They wanted all of humankind to know the truth that sets us free. They wanted all of humankind to have the ability to express our potential, to live our best lives, to be everything we desire to be. Whatever the most beautiful thing is that we can conceptualize for ourselves, we are capable of being. And they made sure, they made certain that we knew that. We speak of this as the truth that sets us free, the truth, the key that unlocks all doors. When you know this truth, no prison can contain you. No prison of belief, no prison of the mind, not even a prison of the body can contain you when you know the truth that sets you free. This is the truth that liberates our hearts and our minds. This is the most important thing that humans can know and understand. This is the secret of consciousness itself, living in this tremendous consciousness universe. At this time, I will invite the members of the mastermind group who are in my Zoom room, anyone who would like to share or contribute to the conversation in any way. I know it's a pretty intense and powerful one today, as usual. I just invite anyone in the Zoom room who'd like to, yeah, exactly. Go ahead. Go ahead, Orlana. Hello.
Hi. It's just amazing. Yeah, it was just amazing. But I have a question, of course. Um, so consciousness is, of course, the one and only reality. I believe that I was asked, though, is a question, who created Mars then? Who created Jupiter? If and I know that it came from our consciousness, right? But like when you're a baby and you don't know anything about, that kind of information, um, what, how does that work? You know what I mean? As far as consciousness is the only one reality, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So Mars and Jupiter, this is a great example to pull up because like even astrologers have implied some sort of metaphysical meaning to these planets. Like they're archetypes, like in our awareness. They embody these different traits and qualities, and the rhythms and patterns and cycles, like all of that, right? So clearly there's an aspect to them that is I would say fundamental in our consciousness. But I,
Yeah.
I want to give you maybe a little bit of a way of relating contextually to this idea to maybe be able to understand a little bit better through language. So
Okay.
the way that I see this, consciousness is the only reality. So consciousness holds, the entire universe, right? So the entire
Exactly.
universe has emerged out of consciousness. So the entire universe, or would say consciousness is the father, right? And so then the father is expressing, and then out comes the universe, right? And then part of that expression outcomes, a solar system and planets, and then
Okay.
in Earth, right? So I mean, obviously there's other planets as well, consciousness
Right.
is unlimited, right? And then out of that comes, these sons and daughters of the Most High, right? Which are these embodiments, these sons, the Bible calls them sons, right? So we're offshoots or embodiments. That we have specific characteristics of our consciousness because we can choose what we become aware of, right? So then we inherit as sons of the Most High a universe in which we're living. Okay. So we are offshoots or sparks of the one divine, right? And the one divine contains all. Okay. So
Okay.
we're now, if the father's outside the story and then writing the story has to have a scene, right? Like some sort of place, right? A set
Yes.
that the drama is occurring on, right? So the father in us, which is source itself,
Mm-hmm.
writes that into being. And then we incarnate into the story as the character. And now we're experiencing life on planet Earth in the context of the set and setting written
Okay.
into being by the Father.
Okay. Okay.
That help? Yeah. Just like
Yes. Yes.
give it a little bit more of a storytelling concept, I think helps to connect these
Right.
ideas. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like,
Okay.
yeah. So we're remember back in lesson 1 at the very beginning, he's saying, the Father in us, the source consciousness contains all things and nothing can ever be deleted.
Mm-hmm.
It's all that is and it exists forever. It's eternal. So,
Right.
in this unique capacity of being the sons of the Most High, we have the ability to experience something and not something else. Okay.
Right.
Right. So,
Okay.
like, that's the unique state that the Father incarnates into to have experiences such as these.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Great
you.
question, Orlando. I love that. Yeah. Fantastic. It's a fun way to relate to it. Anyone else in the Zoom room would like to share or contribute?
I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead, Natasha.
Hi, hello everybody. Hello friends. First of all, thank you, Josiah, again for another wonderful mystery school. I feel it in my heart. And I just wanted to speak to this idea of you were mentioning, awareness is all you need. There's no aid needed, and that obstacles are overcome when you're just simply aware of being. And that's been something I've been thinking about all this week. And just like the simplicity of just being present, because it's amazing how everything unfolds when I'm just remembering where I am, like bringing myself back to this moment, and like all of my problems disappear, people level up around me. It's just incredible, the effortlessness of it all. And so of course, it's always so timely. You're always speaking to what's going on collectively. So thank you. That's all I wanted to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natasha. If I remember correctly, your YouTube name is Do Nothing Be Happy?
Yes.
Say no more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exhibit A.
Yes, exactly. That's perfect. Yeah. What I'm present to from your sharing is how easy it is to overcomplicate what you just shared. We particularly in our modern and very busy minds, perhaps, it's very easy to like make up that there's more than that, right? It's like, could it possibly be that simple? But this is why I like coming back each week to this simple wisdom. And I know we expand it, and I know we do make it a little bit intellectual in these spaces, but it's important to come back and to ground back into truly how simple it is. That it is just simply that. It's the simple awareness. And can we do more? Yes, but it's not necessary. That's our choice to, but it's not necessary. Right. So it's important to remember that. So thank you for reminding of that, Natasha.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
Hello. The one thing that really stood out was the changes of concept of self results in a change relationship to the world. So that's a reminder of like when we go within, and you have your imaginal act, it's how the people are responding to that upgrade. You have to see actually the people differently and how they see you. That kind of is a reminder, because sometimes I feel like maybe I see them the same. So seeing a change is how I think the upgrade or the self concept upgrades for us. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit further.
That's a great call out. That was a key nugget. I bolded it in the text because I was like, when I was reading, I was like, wow, this is an amazing key element of this exploration. So yeah, it's and it makes sense, right? So it's like if people around us to a large degree animate and reflect back to us our concept of self, then it makes sense, logically even, that when we change our concept of self, the way that other people see us would also change. But because that word animate, because they animate it, that's a great way to really bring the new concept to life by seeing them animating differently. Right. So it's almost like a state of mind hack there. It's like, okay, I'm now becoming this new person. Naturally, if I'm now a different person, I'm expressing a different aspect of my potential, it makes sense that people around me would respond to me a little bit differently. And obviously we want that to be in a beautiful and uplifting way, right? But we write, so it's like writing the scene of these other characters. Like, how are these characters now responding to our character? Like, that's like a key way of animating this whole new self-concept. And so I love that Neville called that out, and he did so, like, the way that he wrote that little paragraph was, like you said, is very like, whoa, really landed this idea of, if I'm changing, the people around me are changing in the way that they relate to me. And then using it as a check-in, like, if I'm going in and I'm creating a new expression of myself, and then I see the people around me the same way, then I haven't really moved. It's more of a daydream as opposed to an actual change of state, right? So it's like a great way to like check in and make sure that movement has occurred. Awesome. Thank you for that,
Thank you.
Monica.
Just to elaborate on that, I guess, so you're seeing them differently because you see yourself differently. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're seeing you differently because you're different.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So let's give an example just to take this out of the
Right.
realm of the theoretical. Okay.
Right.
So let's say, this is a hypothetical. So let's say that you have a partner, right? And you know that you have been less than an ideal partner to this partner for a while now. And you know that it has affected the relationship. And then you decide, for just as an example, that you want to be a better partner. Like, you're going to be the best partner that you could possibly be. Quite naturally, your partner is going to now see you in a different light as a result of you now being the best partner, right? So whatever their behavior was, or whatever way they were reacting to you prior, that's not going to be the same anymore, because now you're being a different person, right? So now you would see them in their upgraded reactions to the new person that you're being. So let's say that you were maybe, or like even your kids, right? Let's say maybe you were a little impatient with your kids recently, or like, a little annoyed with them, like that type of thing. Now they're seeing you that way, you're seeing them that way, right? And then you're like, no, I actually want to be like a rock star mom or dad. Like, I want to be like the best mom or dad I could possibly be, right? So then you move into that state and you're saying, okay, how would I treat my kids? Like, what would that relationship be? And then how would they see me? What would their reactions to me in this new state be? And this is a way of checking in to make sure that movement has occurred, because you should see an actual change in your mind's eye, in your imagination, between the way that the old self-concept was reflected back in their eyes, the eyes of another, and the way that the new self-concept is being reflected back.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rolanda.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, go ahead.
Right. So, and just in relation to that, I think it's so amazing, when it was talking about like turning your eyes upon Jesus, because Jesus is not a historical figure.
Yes.
It's your desire. And
Yes.
it reminded me of a favorite verse I had, I've always had, which is turn your eyes upon Jesus.
Yes.
And parts of those, it made me wonder, did the person who wrote that thing, was he esoteric? Because he says, and when you turn your eyes on Jesus, the things of the world will fade away. So, and it's exactly what you're required to do when you go within. You're supposed to look at your desire and forget about everything outside. So that was really deep. Yeah. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Angie, for surfacing that. Another example of the same story being told slightly differently by these ancient storytellers. There's literally this one idea, and it's phrased in all these different ways. And what I love about this is once you have the eyes, like we talk about installing the eyes, the language training to like understand what was being conveyed, you start to see that it's everywhere. And for me personally, it brings me joy to see that this is what it was taught the whole time. Like, yes, maybe I and other people misunderstood initially, but now I see it like, oh no, it was there the whole time. Like this is it's phenomenal. Like it's such a beautiful thing. Thank you for that, Angie.
True. All right.
Anyone else in the Zoom room? Awesome. Okay. So that's going to do it for the text here with Sunday Mystery School. We are going to be continuing next week, getting into the next story. He just keeps going here, right? So we're in assumptions hardened into fact. We're going to keep going into the next story and working our way through this lesson. Those of you that are mastermind members, go ahead and hop into that Zoom link. We're going to do the mastermind group call right after this session. And yeah, that's all for now. I hope that was insightful and inspirational. I feel that it was. I feel in my soul that it was.